Hi guys, I'm tired. I'm not tired. I'm exhausted. Um, I'm everything I am not supposed to be. But I had to come here and I had to share. I have to share with you. I have to bless you guys with my presence. Um, and I have to say that life is well and truly a journey. And I know that when I was growing up in Jamaica, and I still hear it as adulthood, that people say to you that what is yours? Hi, Marine. What is yours can never be someone else's. And I know I always say to people that sometimes we're failing at what we're doing because we're not doing what is intended for us. And we do not pay attention to what is intended for us, oftentimes because it doesn't have the package that we expect. As I sit here tonight, it's night for me, I am well and truly grateful. Grateful for life, grateful, however poor the life was, for the life I had, and grateful for the fact that life has prepared me for moments like this. And I'm going to share it with you guys. You see, sometimes when we have had a less than desirable life, we tend to want to say, why me? Why me? Why not that person? If only I've had another childhood, if only I'd had another education opportunity. But you know why you? Because whatever life is throwing at you, it is to prepare you for what to come. It is to ground you. It is to harden you. Or it is to let you be able to appreciate things that you probably never thought you would have had. Something interesting happened today. Very, very interesting. And as I always say, no matter where I go as a person, and no matter how far Zyzven Naturals go as a business, I am eternally grateful and must forever pay homage to my Bath St. Thomas maroon roots and my grandmother who raised me and taught me everything I know, including what a childhood is, because that's the only childhood I know. Now, I also have to look back and no matter what has happened to me, and that is why sometimes when I tell my story, and I tend to have that smile on my face, and people like, oh, but you're smiling. Because for me, no matter what happened, no matter what had happened in life, I have never asked, when it was negative, I have never asked myself, why me? I would say, I don't think I deserve this. I know this is wrong. But I never questioned it. I never say, why me? Why not somebody else? Why not that girl across there? And now, when the good things are happening, when the right people are putting their feet and planting a seed of prosperity in my life, I am also not asking why me. Because I know I deserve it. I worked for it. And I am able to embrace it because hey, good buddy. Because had I not had, and I always say, I can never look back on my childhood and say, and my childhood, when I say childhood, I refer to the period I had in Bath St. Thomas. That is the only childhood I know until I was 10, 11. Had I not have that childhood, had I not had that strong maroon woman I had for a grandmother, had I not faced the obstacles and poverty that I faced as a child growing up in Bath St. Thomas, I would have not, there would be no Zyzven Naturals. Had I grown up in an upper middle class family, somewhere in the corporate area or a more developed part of Jamaica, there would be no Zyzven Naturals. Zyzven Naturals is, in many ways, the life I've had. Taught me that. Now, I'm not going to sit and blab about Zyzven Naturals today. What I'm going to blab about is when you order your steps in a positive direction, when you shift your mind, when you manifest things to yourself and you remove all the negativities, all the dead weight, all the spectators that are not cheering you along, but they're peeping through their small keyholes, waiting to say, this is not possible. When you even remove the doubts you have in the back of your head telling you that, oh my God, how comes a little dry girl like me, how did I get here? If you do not embrace it and say for yourself that this is what life was intended to be, hey Jillian, if this, I am deserving of this, I worked for this, those opportunities will pass you by. If you don't, because if you don't tell it to yourself, your mother might tell you, your father might tell you, your husband, your wife, your co-worker, somebody else, just as it happened for me. I often tell you guys that as a 16-year-old child, lost, as a 16-year-old teenager who moved from Montego Bay, running away from life, and moved from Montego Bay to Mandeville, I was for all intended purposes, I was a little girl lost. And if that guy Dalton did not see in me as a 16-year-old what others came to see in me as an adult, because he saw it in me before I even knew I was capable of it. And then he invested. Had he not done that, and had I not, maybe it was because I heard it enough, because my grandmother cemented that in me. My grandmother always said to me, you know your name? Your name is Shaunafi. My grandmother calls me Shaunafi. I call myself Shanafi. My grandmother calls me Shaunafi. And she always said, look at your name. Anyone who meets you, they will never forget you, your name. They might not be able to pronounce your name, but they will never forget who you are. And for me, those were just words. But with everything that has been happening, I have to say, you know what? These steps, figurative steps, that I am making as a business person, as an individual, the personal development that I am experiencing, the entrepreneurial development, transitioning from an entrepreneur, because I was always about the money. I was never about the legacy. As an entrepreneur, I was always about the money. What is the next big thing I can do to make this quick 3-4 million and then move on? I was always about the money. But as I transition, and in life, it might not be business, but personally, as you transition from a teenager to an adult, as you transition from a woman who says, when am I going to find a husband, to a woman who says, let me live my best life and maybe that husband will come. As we transition, as I transition from that entrepreneur to this businesswoman who is cementing the legacy for my children and their children, I am learning that you have to release anything that is not contributing. Hi, Debs. Anything that is not contributing to your personal development, or if it's not contributing to your personal development, if it is not contributing to your bank balance, it has no space in your life. If you are in a stadium of people and you're on the field and they're not cheering you on, you might very well be in your bathroom by yourself doing the same thing, because the results are going to be the same. The difference is you lose, because of human nature, you lose motivation if you have a whole stones around you. You lose motivation because you start to question. Why isn't Petrina encouraging me? Why isn't Debisha correcting me? But if you're in that room of spectators who are not embracing and pushing you, and you leave that space, because if it is not contributing to your personal development, or it is not contributing to your bank balance, you don't need it in your life. You don't. Hey, Kiki. You don't need it in your life. If it is not making a positive impact and on who you are or on your business, it's not needed. It is taking up space. It is taken away from you, because your energy is going to move away from this very positive person, and you're going to start focusing on what they're doing. And one of the things I've learned, and one of the things I'm implementing, one of the things I manifested in my 2020 manifesto, is that I don't care what the other person is doing. What you're doing is your business. I am here to do me. And the less attention I pay to what you are doing or what you are not doing, whether as an individual, whether as a competition, whatever it is, the less attention, the less energy I invest in what someone, exact Miss Carol, the less energy I invest in giving attention to another person's business, is the more positive energy I have for myself and for my business. And I will say something that George Bush, we laugh at him, but he says something which these days when I see that formula for self-development, that formula for business development is working. George Bush once said, exactly, Miss Carol, George Bush once said, you're either my friend, I'll paraphrase it, you're either my friend or you're my enemy. You're either with me or you're against me. There are no middle grounds. In a quest for your personal development, there is no middle ground. It's either you're helping me get from point A to point B, or you're not needed. Because it is better to be in an empty room listening to your own echo than to be in a stadium of silent people. Because you went into a stadium filled with people because somehow you think that they will cheer you on, so you can have that support. Because a lot of us we don't have the thing where, or can do like I do. I can stand here and talk to people I'm not seeing. Not everybody has that thing in them, that if somebody else is not there in their side pushing them, they're not motivated to go on. Because a lot of people, they can't do things unless it is validated by others. We have to teach ourselves that exactly, Patrina, we have to teach ourselves that self-validation is the only or what you say in Swedish, självbekräftelse. Self-validation is the only validation you need. Because everybody else can tell it to you. But unless you see it for yourself, it is a waste of people's energy. So many of us go to these life coaches and to these people who are telling us things we already know. But because we have this undying because we have this thing that somebody else has to say to me, somebody else have to validate my own validity. Yeah, because you know who you are. You know how they say in Jamaica, you can lie to the world, but you can't lie to yourself. You don't need somebody else to tell you what you already know about yourself. You don't need somebody, whether it's good or it's bad. You don't need another person to validate who you are as a person, because you know who you are. What you might need is someone to give you the tools to implement what you already know that you are capable of. And that is what I am getting. Because when I was in my kitchen in Mandeville, everybody was telling me, Shanafi, this is the time for these natural things. You are dancing with a multi-million-dollar industry. But I didn't believe it. And it was until I believed it in December 2018. And it took me about, and this is how life is. From the moment I recognized that I was on to something good, and then I made contact on the 12th. It was, when things are ordained to be. I've never told you the story, how it went. I was in my kitchen in Sweden. I made a whole batch of licorice soap. And when I was finished making the licorice soap, I was making it on live, Facebook Live over my other page. We made, I think it was 86 licorice soap. And when the live was finished, I had sold 86 licorice soap. And then I realized that what everybody was telling me for the last year was good. I was on to something good. And in that moment, I asked my ex-husband to call what you people would call your chamber of commerce, your city council, whatever you call it, my commune. And that lady, you see, I tag her in a post today. She was so kind that she gave us audience in a meeting the next day, the 14th of December, 2018. That was when I finally believed, even though for the last year and a half, customers, everyone was telling me, Shanafi, you're sitting on a gold mine. Shanafi, your hands are blessed, you're this and that. And that's why I say, people can tell you things, but until you believe it yourself, it doesn't make sense. They tell you it will go here and it will come out here. Yeah? And she gave me audience. And within 1 week, she helped me to set up funding, to set up everything so I could take the company where I wanted it. And I went on live on my other page, the ISA page, on the 31st of December. And I said to that live audience, I am going to build a multilateral, multinational company. There are two things I said. I said, my friend Lisa always told me that, Shanafi, if you're doing something and I have to borrow the money to give it to you, I'm going to borrow the money to give it to you. Because whatever your hands touch turns gold. Lisa has been telling me that for a decade. She knows why. I know why too. But until I believed that, and I went on live and I said, you know what? You people are not going to believe me, because as Black people, I always say that, as Black people, we are programmed to not see success when we look in the mirror and the person looks like us. Because 400 years after slavery, we still believe that success comes wrapped in a white cloth. I said that. And I also said that it took Amazon 10 years to make a profit. And I also said when eBay was going public, people didn't buy into it. But if they had invested in eBay and Sky, they would be sitting pretty. And I said Uber was around for maybe 4 years in 2018. And Uber continuously invest in new markets. But Uber hadn't made a profit. They still haven't made a profit 6 years into business. But they continue. And I said, you know what? I know a lot of people are not going to believe in me because guess what? And I said, I think these were my words. I am just a black dry-eyed girl from Bath St. Thomas. I don't have name recognition and I don't have complexion recognition. That's what I said. But I know who I am. And I know that I can do this. What I also know is I can't do this alone. So I am inviting you to become a part of this movement. I said all of that. And one person immediately believed in me. Jamsweet.com. They were the first distributors we had. That person believed in me. And in 2019, I had the dream. Sorry, I'm tired. I had the dream for 2019 when I made that, and I said it. I said, if I'm able to bring this company to grow 200%, I would be happy. At the end of 2019, Zyzven Naturals, the company that I started in my kitchen in Mandeville, grew 750%. 750%. The last quarter, it grew like 450% in the last quarter. And just like I went to my city council back when I realized that I was onto something good, but I couldn't finance it, I went back to them a year later, this January 2020. And I said to them, and this is what today's live is about, having the right people in your life, removing the negativity, focusing on you, knowing that you have to make bank. You have to make bank. I went back to my city council, and I have a love-hate relationship with Sweden, but I love the country I live in. I love my village. I love the parish I live in. I went back to them. In fact, they were the one who called me to a meeting and said I was being quiet. Am I stuck? No, I'm a Jamaican. I'm not used to that kind of treatment in Jamaica. Yeah. And I said, you know what? The problem I have these days is the fact that everybody is asking me. For one, Swedish people think that I am located in the US and they're afraid of the import duties. So I'm having this problem now. I make excellent products. I'm one of those people, if it's good, it's good. I don't beat the bush. Some people call it arrogant. I say I know my worth. I make excellent products. I can change the melanated skin, blemishes, without changing the makeup of the skin. I don't have to bleach you to fix your acne. But guess what? People in Europe don't know that. If they know Zyzven Naturals, they think I am located in the United States. And for me, that is a problem. I am getting the question daily, how is it that the only black person in Scandinavia who makes luxury skincare products for that dark-skinned people can use, how is it that nobody knows who you are? Why is it that everyone thinks you're in the United States? And I said to my city council and the lady that I tagged in that post today, the one that has mothered the company with me, I said, you know what? That is a problem. I didn't leave the room before she got on her phone and fixed the marketing for me. As I say, I have a love-hate relationship with Sweden. But where I live, I love it. I live in the countryside. I don't even have buses on weekends. I live in a village of maybe 500-600 people. And one thing led to another, and leading to that photograph that I post. Had I been the kind of person, had I not manifested that in 2020, Zyzven Naturals has to make 7 figures, there is no question about it. We have to. There are no alternatives. We have to make 7 figures in 2020 because it is doable. Had I not manifested that for myself in 2019, I would have been in a situation where I'm sitting over there and saying, so why isn't Michelle doing that? Why isn't Nigel doing that? Why isn't Patrina doing that? You know what I said? If this company is going to make 7 figures, I have to ensure that it makes 7 figures, whether Michelle helps me or whether that one helps me. But this is my manifestation. This is my goal. This company, this brand has to be the go-to brand for people who are rich in melanin and then everybody else. But I have to depend on me to do it. And one way of depending on me to doing it, is recognizing that your network, network, translates to your net worth, networth. I also have to recognize and continue the model that I have built, where I did not, for 2 years, 2017, 2019, I didn't focus on making profit. I focused on building the brand. And building the brand at a pace that I could manage. That was completely my focus. It wasn't about making the money. Not having to go into my pocket to do it is nice. And that is the mistake we make as small business people. That is another mistake we, the descendants of slaves, make. We don't think, we like to sell. We like to sell. We're happy as long as we know where the next meal is coming from. And we need to break that thinking, it's like you want to be a principal, but you settle to be a teacher because you don't want to have to eat your food you don't want to have to make the sacrifices. Because people say you can't have your cake and eat it. You can have your cake and eat it too, just not at the same time. People say you have to be grounded. I say you stay grounded. I am flying. Because wind. You notice how a plane goes, the speed a plane travels compared to a car, compared to anything that travels on the ground. So why should I keep my feet grounded? And I also recognize that in building something, in building a legacy, I have to be okay with upsetting people. I have to be okay with disappointing people. I have to be okay And you too have to do that. With people saying that you have changed. It is not that you have changed. You have matured. And if somebody no longer serves a purpose in your life, you can't hold on to them. If at 13 you wore a size 7 shoe, when you're 16 and wearing a size 9 shoe, you do not store the size 7 shoe because it has no purpose for you. It can't protect your feet, and if you try to force your foot in it, you're going to have pain. That is the same concept of having people around you who are not contributing to your development in some way. If you constantly put your money in a bank and they're minus in a dollar, but nothing is being added, they're charging you various fees to have your money there, eventually you're going to take your money out of that bank. Because for one, you're going to say, like your grandparents did, let me put it under the mattress. Let me put it under the bed. I'm not making an interest, but I'm not losing any either. It is the same thing with relationship and people. People are either with you or they're against you when you're in business or when you're on the way up. And you don't have to, because someone helped you along the way, it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice your development to make them happy. No. They wanted to help you, they did. Say thank you and move on. You cannot have to be showing eternal gratitude in a tangible way. So today, I had a good meeting. I had a very good meeting. I left that room and I was so positive. It was a validation that we are on the right path as a brand. It was a validation. And a 10-year-old me in Bath, St. Thomas, probably wouldn't have imagined this. And I think as a teenager, everyone expected I was going to grow up. I think it's even in my yearbook. Everyone expected I was either going to grow up to be a lawyer or a journalist. I didn't have those ambitions. And that is also one of the things. So many of us are stuck in jobs we do not like because we're living our parents' dream for us. Hi, Steph. So many of us are miserable in our careers because whatever job we're doing, however fancy it is, however well it pays, it's the same thing for relationships. But let me look at the job. It is not our dream. It is not what we want for ourselves. But a lot of us, the descendants of slaves, we grew up in a culture where your parents decides what's best for you as a career. Maybe if I wanted to be a lawyer, I would have been. I think I'm smart enough for it. The only thing I've ever asked myself in life, why is it that so many times I started university and dropped out? And it was simple. It was other people's dreams. Other people equate success with having fancy degrees. It was other people's dreams. It wasn't mine. And if it is not your dream, you cannot embrace it in reality. If when you wake up and that which is standing in front of you is not yours, you cannot embrace it. And that is why I always tell the story. I always say it, the way I always say it, my name is Shnafi. And even if I did finish, I am a 4-time university dropout. And it wasn't because I was failing academically. And it wasn't because I could not afford it because it's free in Sweden. It is because it was somebody else's dream. It wasn't mine. And until we're living and embracing that which we are ordained to do, I did a lot of things before I started making people's skin beautiful. I worked in the prisons. I was a foster mother for 10 years. I worked with people with special needs. I taught special needs for 3.5 years. I worked with the mentally ill. I worked with drug addicts. Before I found what was mine, and everything else was a job. I worked as a matchmaker for 5 years. I know, it's very unlikely to think that I would be a matchmaker, but Claudia, you probably know. I worked as a matchmaker for 5 years. That was my first dance with entrepreneurship. But those weren't for me. I made the money. Anything I want to do, I make the money. I'm good at making money. But it wasn't for me. It was not. That wasn't what I was called to do. But what I didn't realize is that as a child, growing up in Bath, St. Thomas, when my grandmother used to, without running water or electricity, in those 2 rooms, I didn't realize that that foundation that was the byproduct of poverty was setting me up for my greatest moments in life. Sometimes when somebody say, why you do this? And I say, it is to pay homage to my St. Thomas maroon roots. And people take it lightly, but that is what it is. I didn't understand the value of going out when my grandmother woke us up early in the morning to go and wash our faces in the coca leaves. I didn't understand, and at points when I was growing up, and my cousins were what my grandmother would say fussy. They had a lot of blemishes on their skin. I was somehow embarrassed for the fact that while everybody else was wearing this purple dressing, I don't know if you're old enough to know what this purple dressing in Jamaica is. I don't know iodine or iodine or what it is, that purple thing. If somebody knows the correct name that is watching, you can type it for me. I was embarrassed when everybody else was going to the clinic. Nikema Leslie's mother was a nurse. One of my resellers' mother was a nurse at that clinic. And everybody was going there and they were getting, because something was going around and everybody was just damn fussy. And because you had to pay a small fee, and however small that fee was, we could not afford it. However small that registration fee was at that clinic, we were just 2 many children and we couldn't afford it. And even though it was embarrassing to see my grandmother use the bamboo to make the fire that cooked our breakfast, it's always the same, the mint tea, the basil tea, and the roast green plantain, and sent us off to school. And I was embarrassed when she would take the charcoal from that bamboo, specifically the bamboo. I didn't know as a child in Bath St. Thomas the value of that until I moved to Europe and realized that that bamboo that my grandmother, that bamboo that my grandmother used to burn and use the ash to put in our wounds, that is what the European call activated charcoal. So when I say that Zyzven Naturals is paying homage to my Jamaican maroon roots, I well and truly mean it. It is a certification to every little girl, and hopefully boys, that are like myself and my cousins that grew up in that form of poverty. But while we were in the moment, we did not realize that what poverty was teaching us, what we were embarrassed about. And I have one of my cousins that grew up in that house with me on this live, Ingrid Hutton, for those of you who can see her. Erica, type something there. I have one of my cousins. She was one of my cousins that her mom died and they came to live with us. She's not my grandmother's favorite person, and my grandmother is not her favorite person, but that we can agree with. I did not realize that when the teenage years set on my cousins, and my grandmother used to use the thing that St. Thomas people call red ginger, that the rest of the world calls turmeric. I did not realize that when I was being embarrassed about it, when I so wanted to have Western bandages and plasters and creams, I didn't realize that it was a lesson that we were being taught. I didn't realize that it was giving me a voice. Well, I'm a cousin Deb. Oh, I'm a cousin in the fire today. I didn't realize that it was setting me on a path to say to anyone who grew up the way I grew up, the society tells you that you can't. And as I always say, and I repeat it because I don't want it to ever leave anyone, myself and my cousins, and there were a lot of us, we grew up in 2 rooms. After their mother died, I always lived there. We grew up in 2 rooms, not 2 bedrooms, in 2 rooms and a veranda in Bottom Yard, Bath, St. Thomas. No running water, no electricity, and a latrine, a pit toilet outside. So when someone tells you that you cannot make it, you cannot transfer what you had as a dream into reality because you're from a certain socioeconomic class, I tell you to tell them that I am Shnafi and I am right over there. It is, I don't know if it's because we are from like a class society where somehow we had that cemented in us, that in order to make it, and I can't even believe that even in 2019, I read something that the Heart School was given instructions by some hotels in Jamaica to not send students that were darker shade to the practice. And I can't believe that in 2020, people are still being taught that the socioeconomic conditions and situations that you didn't choose, but you were born into, is somehow a parameter for what your life is going to be or should be. We need to move away from that. You need, as a people, we need to tell ourselves that I can and I will because I must. But in order to have that, you first have to believe it for yourself. And you first have to identify what is it that is my purpose in life. And if I am not living a fulfilled life, What is it that I am doing, or what is it that I need to do in order to live a fulfilled life? Am I living my life for me? Am I living my dreams? Or am I living somebody else's idea of what my dreams should be? If all those bits of the puzzle are not sorted out for you, you're doomed. I'll catch you guys later.